Camera check. Camera rolling. Sound rolling. Broadcast check. Action.
I'm Carl Taylor. Welcome to Carl Taylor live on Facebook and possibly YouTube, but I think they've stuffed that up, so we might not be on YouTube at the same time here at the moment. But anyway, welcome to this live Facebook talk. I'm going to take your questions. So if you've got any questions, they'll come through on my iPad here, and I'll do my best to answer them. So obviously photography related questions, no psychotherapy type questions, just photography related questions, please. Now you can see we have got our studio set up here for tonight's live show, tonight's live talk show. Tonight I've got my guest John Fitzgerald, who will be joining me on the sofa. Now John is a master printer, so anything printing related, whether it's to do with color rips, whether it's to do with calibration, CMYK, RGB, you know, different types of printing materials, paper, surfaces, fine art printing. This guy has got a 35-year career in top printing with a huge array of industry awards for printing. He'll be joining me tonight, so if you've got any printing related questions, join us on the show tonight. John will be happy to answer those, I'm sure, and we're going to get into a really good discussion about the importance of printing your work, how that can benefit your portfolio, and how it can actually improve you as a photographer. Now, also, that's December's guest. We've got a talk, so that's December's guest talk show, but we've also got a photography show on beauty, close-up beauty photography. I think it's December the 19th. And on, where is it? Let me just get my screen up here. January, and I believe it's January the 17th. Let me just get this going here. We have a wonderful guest. We have Tim Flack coming in. Tim Flack is a world-renowned photographer with an incredible collection of work. Here's his website. Tim's just finished a new project called Endangered, and he's just launched a new book, his Endangered Projects, over here on his website. Some beautiful, incredible new images that Tim's been working on. Now, Tim is coming in as a guest on the show on January the 17th, I believe. You'll be able to put your questions to Tim about his wonderful work and his career and his life in photography. So I'm really looking forward to interviewing Tim as a guest. I've been a huge admirer of his work, and I've certainly picked up some great tips from talking to him in the past. So very much looking forward to that one. So if you'd like to be part of that show, then head over to carltayloreducation.com. Sign up. Remember, we've got just £12 or $14 a month. We can't say fairer than that. It's so cheap. You get access to all our courses, all our live shows, everything for that very simple, low monthly price. Right, now, I'm going to take your questions, okay? So if you've got questions, fire them in. They'll come in on this iPad. But before I do that, you see these big things over here? These things, these parabolic reflectors. There's one there. There's one there. There's one, I can never figure this out. There's one there, and there's another one there. Now, I often get asked, because parabolic reflectors are a specialist reflector. I use them for fashion, beauty photography. They're my favorite modifier. I sometimes use them on product photography or food photography to highlight a certain portion and centralize the light in one place. People want to know, we often get asked, as a matter of fact, I've been asked a couple of times this week, is there an alternative to these expensive modifiers that will do a similar job? And the truth is, there isn't anything that will do quite exactly the same. There are a lot of lookalike ones. There are a lot of ones that are made by sort of cheaper manufacturers or competitor ones, but they've all got certain flaws about them. They even don't have enough facets or enough sides so that it's not a true parabola or true parabolic shape. They don't even get the shape right. There's a lot of issues with them that mean they don't do exactly the same thing. But what we do get asked, is there a cheaper alternative that they could use that would get a good result? And I wanted to just show you a couple of things here. So these look like umbrellas, and this one here is an umbrella. This is just a standard Broncolor silver umbrella. Now, the difference between a parabolic reflector and one of these is the shape, depth of it, and the amount of facets, the amount of sides that there are on these things to form a true parabolic shape. I mean, if I go over here and we take a look at this big one, you can see how many facets this is made up by. And if I turn it around, one of the key things you'll see is actually how deep it is. You can see that true parabolic shape that's happening there, which is what gives it that special light quality. Now, this is one that you might be interested in. Now, we use this in our light source course, our recent course that's on karltayloreducation.com. And this one, for a very budget umbrella, is actually really good. This is the Focus 110 umbrella from Broncolor. Obviously, a lot less expensive than a para modifier. It's got quite a few more facets than a standard umbrella. It's got a silver interior, but it's got a slightly matte silver finish to it. And the beauty of it with the long rod is that you can extend the focus position, so you can move it in and out on your light to centralize the beam and sort of reflect the beam back in a similar way to a para, but obviously not as accurate. However, I used this thing, and I used it on a couple of fashion shots, and I was pretty impressed with it. I thought it did a good job. So for a collapsible, easy to use, relatively inexpensive lighting modifier, then I would suggest this could be a good alternative for those that have been very interested in the paras and what the paras can do. I used this on a couple of fashion shots. As a matter of fact, if we just go over to karltayloreducation.com and we go onto the portrait section, in my studio lighting section, it's just taken a while to load up here. In my studio lighting section, I used the Deep Focus 110 on a couple of fashion images just to give it a test, just to see what it was like. And as I said, I was very pleased with the results. So this is a good alternative if you don't have the budget for a para. It's got, as I say, a deep shape to it, works quite well. So that's something you might want to try out if you're looking to do sort of parabolic style work on a budget. Right, next thing. Have we got any questions in? Let's have a look here. Water the Plants has come up on the iPad. Water the Plants today at 3:30 p.m. Must remember to do that. Right, daily, Apple ID verification has come up now. This is why I hate this stuff, right? I hate it. Because every time you try to do something, every time you try to pick up your phone, it tries to connect to Wi-Fi. Every time you pick up your phone, there's some stupid reminder, something, oh, you need to upgrade to this. You can never actually get to do the thing you wanted to do because you're always getting interrupted. And then social media is interrupting you anyway, so you just... Right, anyway, let's carry on. Daily life and stuff. Hey, Karl, I've been struggling at the moment with creative block. Do you have any advice on how to overcome this? Yes, I do, actually. This happens from time to time, and when it happens to me, I go down the pub. No, the fact of the matter is sometimes you need to take a break from it because when you start concentrating on something too much, to the point that it becomes an obsession, to the point that you start fretting about it and getting worried about it, and you can't seem to make a breakthrough, you're not going to get anywhere. It's actually better just to leave it alone, walk away from it, and go and do something else completely different. Now, what I do to relax is I do a lot of diving, scuba diving, wreck diving at the weekends, and I find it just separates me from my work. And a lot of people say to me, well, why don't you get your underwater camera and get some beautiful shots down there and all this sort of stuff? And I never wanted to, because I always wanted a separation from my work. And I also get asked the same question. I was in Paris at the weekend to see my friend Jeffrey Sadoris and see some other friends of mine. And I paid a quick visit to Paris, left the wife and kids at home and got away for a couple of days, which is unusual. And I don't take a camera with me. I'm walking around Paris with Jeffrey and his wife, having a wonderful time looking at all the sights and showing them different things. And Jeffrey's clicking away like mad. I haven't even got my camera, I just have my phone. Because you need to step aside from it sometimes. You need a break from it. And I find that if you continually are focused on it in such a way, you can get a bit of a block. And I prefer to sort of start things on a project fresh and come up with ideas and pre-visualize things. So I would say, give yourself a break, separate from it, pre-visualize things, write down, sketch down ideas when you feel inspired, and then follow those ideas up at a later time. I mean, as an example, let's just have a look. We recently shot some new pictures here, some fashion images. I was really pleased with these images. But all of these images, these new images, I sketched them down well in advance, ahead of the shoot. The ideas were sketched down and worked out. And then I basically went into the shoot running, knowing what I wanted to achieve, you know. So a bit of planning and preparation can go a long way. Someone here is called Prasanna Gandre says, how dynamic range affect the fashion photography? Well, dynamic range affects any type of photography. Dynamic range is the latitude you have between your darkest black recording to your brightest possible white recording. The bigger the dynamic range, the greater the latitude you can record. So for example, on the new, where is it gone? Where's the Hasselblad gone, the H6? There it is, let me get it. So on the new Hasselblad H6 100 megapixel, which I've been testing recently. I'm going to show you some results from that in a minute. On a camera like this, it's got a huge dynamic range because it's got this whopping, great, big, massive, huge digital sensor that you can see there. And the greater dynamic range means that I can recover detail from the highlights, I can pull detail up from the shadows. So the greater dynamic range, not just for fashion photography, it's for any type of photography where you've got more control basically over the image. Let's have a look at what else we've got here. How does the shutter speed work? That's a bit of a, I don't really quite understand the question there. The shutter is the bit that opens and closes to let the light in. You've got an aperture that is generally in the lens, opens and closes to let the light through, and it also controls the depth of sharpness either side of the focus point. Smaller aperture, greater depth of field, bigger aperture, less depth of field, shallow depth of field. And then you have a shutter that opens and closes, which is basically a time of a door that opens and closes that lets the right amount of light through as well, but it also acts to either freeze the subject or allow it to blur. That's what the shutter is. If you want to learn more about shutter speeds and how they work, check out the Essentials section on carltayloreducation.com. We've got courses there for beginners to take you right from those very basics all the way to advanced stuff. Next question here from Tim Owen. How can I get my mojo back? I get fed up if looking at great photographers and my photography just lacks their talent, and I don't want to be, but I am fed up with photography and my cameras and flashes just sit in my bag. Okay, Tim. I think we all go through this from time to time. It's a little bit like the question we had earlier from daily life and stuff. you know, sometimes I go through this as well. You know, you go through periods where you look at your work and you think, oh, that's not as good as I hoped it would be, or I want to do this and it didn't work out. And then you look at other great photographers. I look at other photographers' work who I admire, and I'm just thinking, wow, how did they do that? How, you know, but you just have to take inspiration from their work, and you have to study it, and you have to try and identify what is it. Is it the lighting? Is it the composition? Is it the colors? You know, is it the post-production? What is it about that work that really inspires you, or even makes you fear photography in some ways, because you're questioning whether you'll ever be good enough to achieve that? And you have to take that on board and try and break it down and analyze it and study it. And my work has come a long way, I would say, in the last 5 years. Certainly a lot further than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And it's through knowledge, it's just through learning stuff. And hopefully through KyleTaylorEducation.com, we're able to pass a lot of that knowledge down to you about the way that professional photographers think, the way that I shoot, the way that I do it. And with getting great guests on the show here, you're learning stuff, okay? You're learning from other great photographers. So hopefully when Tim Flack comes in on the show, obviously he's going to talk about his new book, he's going to talk about his work, but we'll be able to pick up tips from the guy, you know? I've spoken to Tim in the past, and he's given me tips about, you know, controlling the light in the post-production and things like that, which have been extremely useful to how I apply any post-production on my work in terms of burning and dodging and shading and toning, things like that. So there's always the scope, Tim, to learn. There's always the scope to develop. Sometimes, like the earlier question, you do need to take a break from it. You just need to just clear your head and start again with a fresh, optimistic perspective. Hello, Carl. This is from Jiteshwarora, I think. Hello, Carl. What's the big deal with the insane dynamic range of the latest cameras? Honestly, pulling out too much detail in the highlights and shadows will make our images very flat, won't it? No, not necessarily. An image can be basically not pushed up to the white end at all, and not pushed to the deep end of blacks. You could have an image that doesn't have any white points or any black points in it, but all the contrast is in the mid-range, in the mid-tones, and it can still look spectacular. So the way you post-produce your images can have a big effect on how the appearance of contrast is, even if you don't have pure white and pure black. Photography isn't just about dynamic range, obviously. It's about the content of the image. It's about the story, the narrative. It's about the color. It's about lots and lots of different things. The fact is, if you've got greater dynamic range, it just means you've got more to work with. It means that you've got the information there that you can pull back or use if you need it. So it's better to have greater dynamic range. I mean, at the end of the day, your eyes and your brain have a greater dynamic range than any camera. Now, you wouldn't like it if we reduced the dynamic range of your eyes so that you couldn't see the detail in that shadow or see the detail in that highlight. You'd hate that, okay? So having more dynamic range is obviously beneficial. Right, what have we got here? Sean Taylor King, on a budget of £5,000, which would you recommend? The Pentax 645Z or the Fuji GFX? Look, Sean, to be honest, I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, I don't know. I don't know either of those cameras really well. I do know that the Pentax does not have, for a medium format camera, it doesn't have the ability to sync the shutter at any speed with flash. On this beauty and previous Hasselblads and on the Phase, you can sync the shutter speed at any flash, the flash at any shutter speed. So I can go outdoors, I can use this at 1/2000th of a second, and I can fire flash with it. And that's not using HS or HSS, that's just pure photography using flash at any shutter speed, the way the Leaf shutter system works. On the Pentax, you can't do that. I don't know if you can do it on the Fuji. You can do it on the Hasselblad X1D, which may be a little bit more expensive than your budget. You're saying £5,000. I think the X1D might be about £6,000. So I'd also consider the Hasselblad X1D as a possibility as a camera option in medium format as well. It's had exceptionally good score results. DxO gave it an amazing score results for the quality of its sensor. I know as a Hasselblad ambassador, I am bound to say that, of course, but the fact is Hasselblad, in my opinion, is the best system in the world in terms of lenses, optics, sensors, color, everything. I cannot comment on the Pentax or the Fuji. I've not used them, but Fuji do make excellent lenses. Right, Ed Muscat says, I got myself a relatively large parabolic octabox. There's no such thing as a parabolic octabox, I'm afraid, because an octabox means it's octagonal, and that cannot be parabolic if it's octagonal. I'm struggling to find the right distance between the light and the subject. There seems to be a point where it might as well be a large softbox and a point where the shadows deepen a bit too much. And the reasons for that, Ed, I'm afraid, is because it is an octabox, okay? It's not a parabolic reflector. There is only one type of parabolic reflector, and that is one that is actually a parabolic shape. That is a parabolic shape, and that is a true parabolic shape. If you look up the very definition of a parabola or a parabolic shape, let me go on to Wikipedia here a second. If we look up the very definition of parabola, if I can remember how to spell it, no, parabolic, sorry, let's put that in, parabolic, there we go, parabolic reflector. That's a parabolic reflector, okay? That's the shape of a parabolic reflector. That's the way the light has to bounce into it to come out of it the same direction. And over there is one. That is one, okay? And that's it. There is nothing else that is there's nothing else that's true parabolic. So there's no way an octabox, which is octagonal, can be parabolic because it has to have this certain shape. So I'm afraid you've got an octabox, and there's nothing wrong with octaboxes. I use octaboxes. You can use them to do great work, but they're a softbox. They give a softbox type of light. They're just quite big, usually 150 centimeters wide, so you can get a very nice soft light off them. Next one. Hi, Carl. Please tell me if a small studio is better with white color walls or total black. What do you recommend? Thank you, regards, Igor. Well, they both have advantages. The white is good if you want to bounce light off it and use the space as a reflector, but when you don't want light to reflect off it, then the white is a pain. So what you really need to do is come up with a system where you can have black curtains on the wall and draw them around your studio and over the ceiling so that you can switch from one to the other. So when I used to work in a very small studio space, this is a huge studio we've got here now. This is my 5th studio, but my very first studio 25 years ago, or 20 years ago, was a tiny little space. And what I used to do was have the ability to black it out as necessary. You need both, to be honest. And in Light Source, our course on carltayloreducation.com, we show you how you can work in small studio spaces and control the light more carefully so that you're not as affected by the problems of a small studio space. So over on carltayloreducation.com, just £12, $14 a month. Can't say fairer than that. Check that out over on there. Now, next question. Do you encourage to use presets in Lightroom or suggest we build our own pictures? That question is from Prashanth. That's a very good question. I definitely encourage you just do your own work. Presets are okay if you're just trying to throw a load of pictures together and you want to work quickly, but they're not really your pictures. They're someone else's preset, and they're a preset that someone else designed for something else. Not even for your picture. So a certain preset is not necessarily going to look the same on your picture. Now, we've got some free presets over on carltayloreducation.com, but the fact of the matter is I prefer to just do my own work on the picture. Do what you think suits the work. I mean, you can use a preset as a starting point, but don't stay locked into it. You can manipulate it further to suit the image. So my personal preference is to, do your own thing. Right, now let's take a break from the questions a minute. I want to just talk about tonight's show. So over here tonight, John Fitzgerald's coming on to talk about professional printing, fine art printing, lab printing, displaying your work, creating your own portfolios. We're going to be looking at things like CMYK, RGB conversions, the different materials and surfaces that you can use for photographic printing, whether it's the pearlescent, the metallic, the art paper, and what the advantages and the benefits of each one are. John's going to be answering all your questions. He's got a 35-year career in printing. He's won top awards from the best in the industry for this type of stuff. We're going to be looking at the longevity of print and different materials, the type of inks, the whole process. So that's tonight's show at 6 p.m. GMT UK time, 1300 EST New York time, over on carltayloreducation.com. If you're a member already, tune in. You'll be able to ask John questions live, ask me questions live, and he'll be on hand to offer his expertise. And we'd love to see you over there this evening on that show. If you're not a member already, just sign up, $14 a month. You can get access to that show. As I said, we've also got the wonderful Tim Flack coming on to talk about his work in the January show, and we've got lots of actual live shoot shows as well. Now, I'm also going to show you in just a moment, I'm going to show you some images from the H6-100 compared to one of the best full frame 35mm cameras, the Sony a7R. I did some test shots recently, and we're producing a video that we're releasing very soon that shows a side-by-side, very scientific comparison over a range of ISOs, a range of apertures, showing the exact comparable results of these cameras. I'm going to show you a couple of those results very, very shortly, but let me just take a couple more questions here. This guy, Nello Johnson, says, business question, how to address business you want to photograph by email? I guess what you're saying is, how do you contact a business by email that you want to do work for? Well, I'm not sure I would just contact them by email. Our business course covers a lot of this information, but I personally maybe want to write them a letter, arrange a meeting. There's lots of things that you can talk about and the way you can talk about to them. So yeah, I mean, speculative shooting is another example. Is, you know, one of the key things when you're talking to a business is talk to them about what's relevant. I mean, for example, yesterday I was shooting pictures for a wine company and shooting bottles of wine. Now, if I had started talking to him about fashion photography, he wouldn't have been interested in the slightest, you know. That would have been no use to his business whatsoever. He would have had no interest in it whatsoever. So whatever business you're approaching or talking to, then you need to be on point. You need to be giving them examples of the sort of thing that their business does for them to be interested in the first place. Next question. How much does professional post-production work cost for product photography? And where can I find a reliable editor? Well, I use different people. I do most of my own post-production work. I enjoy doing the post-production work. Generally, my product photography, I don't apply that much post-production work to it. It's just a little bit of polishing, burning and dodging. I try to apply the principles of good photography and lighting techniques instead. But if you want a professional retoucher, I can recommend Victor Fayesh, who is a guy that we've used. He's also produced some courses with us, some high advanced level Photoshop training on carltayloreducation.com. So how much you pay for that? Well, you better email Victor at guildstudios.com and he'll give you some prices. I don't know what his current rates are. I've forgotten. Now, next question. Paul Ferreira says, hi Carl, what do you think about bringing the new mirrorless cameras to the studio to do some commercial stuff? I'm still not a fan of the mirrorless cameras. The only mirrorless cameras that we've got a Sony a7S that we use for video, but we don't tend to put our eye up against the viewfinder to film with that. I used the Sony a7R the other day, which I'm not sure is mirrorless or not, I can't even remember. But we used the X1D Hasselblad, which is mirrorless, and it was a fantastic camera, but I'm still not that keen on the whole mirrorless experience. I much prefer, you know, a mirror, a prism, to look through a prism like this and see what's going on, or be able to look down into a camera and see what's going on. So for me, that's the sort of cameras I've grown up with, basically, and I like I like seeing the actual photons of light striking my eye rather than an electronic image. Next question, Laurentio Anton. I've had a lot of errors while testing the H6D a few months ago. How the camera is performing right now with the latest updates on the firmware? Well, I've been sent this by Hasselblad because I used the 50 and I got sent the 100 because I wanted to test it for a couple of weeks because I'm buying one of these. I have to pay for them, unfortunately. I do get a discount though. So as an ambassador, they sent me one to test, and I've got to say 2 weeks, flawless. I've not had a single error, a single issue. The shoot through rate, given that this is shooting 100 megapixel images that are 600 megabytes per file with the USB-C into a fast computer, bang, 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 no image clogging, no problems, no nothing. This particular one, and I don't know which firmware edition it's got, but this is the one I got sent to me, absolutely flawless, no problems whatsoever, and it actually firmed up my decision that I will be purchasing one of these very soon and trading in or selling my previous H5 camera. So if you've got any issues with it, Laurentio, then yeah, definitely check a new firmware update and make sure you haven't got an issue there. Michael says, Carl, how useful are power packs with asymmetrical 2-to-1 versus fully asymmetrical power distribution? Personally, I'd only go with fully asymmetrical power distribution. If you can't get fully asymmetrical power distribution, you might as well have monoblock lights, because at least monoblock lights is fully asymmetrical because you've got control over each one as a monoblock. Say like the Syros, you've got complete control over a 9-stop or 10-stop range. Power packs where you can only set 1 2-to-1 to the ratio of the other, I mean, then you've got to start moving lights backwards and forwards to make fine-tune adjustments in power. I just couldn't work that way. I mean, I have to adjust my lighting down to 1/10 of an f-stop accuracy for certain product shots, for certain minute adjustments. And there's no way I could start moving lights back and forwards using the inverse square law to adjust the power that way, because then everything would be out of position. So for me, it has to be fully asymmetrical or nothing. I'd rather work with monoblock lights if I couldn't have fully asymmetrical, because at least monoblock lights would be fully asymmetrical. Marta Homick says, hi Carl, what do you think about Capture One software? Is it better than Lightroom? Yes, it's definitely better than Lightroom. Capture One's very good software. The only question with it is, can you tether shoot your camera into it? It's designed for tethered shooting with the Phase camera in the same way that the Focus software is designed for tethered shooting with the Hasselblad. I don't know what other cameras you can tether into Capture One, but from what I've seen of Capture One, it looks like a great bit of software. So if you can tether your Canons and your Nikons, your Olympuses into it, could be a great one to use, because if I have to tether a Canon camera, I usually tether it into Lightroom. And when we were shooting with the Sony A7R the other day, we had to tether it into the Sony software, and it was diabolical. The Sony software is like 3 different panels, 1 capture panel, 1 viewer panel, 1 adjustments, and it was like, which window do I need to? Oh, it was an absolute nightmare. But no, Capture One is very good as a software. AJ says, hey Carl, in the studio, f16 is better or f1.2? AJ, unless you've mistyped something and you're saying, is f16 better than f11, then I'm not quite sure what you mean there. And it means you're missing a vital piece of photographic knowledge from your skill set and your repertoire, and you need to head over to carltayloreducation.com to the Essentials section, and you need to understand fully the range of apertures from f1.4 to 2.8, f5.6, f8, f11, f16, f22, f32, f45, f64, and understand what the relationships are with those apertures to each other and the shutter speeds and everything else, because it's a really important part of the process. And if that question is what I think it is, it means you're missing a vital bit of information, because I can't answer that question because it doesn't actually make sense. Next question, Julian Payet Tessier, how would you shoot a high reflective product? To be able to make a reflective shot and a non-reflective shot, I'm able to create the high reflective effect with a speed light or an iPhone flash, but not with my strobes. That, again, Julian, that doesn't make any sense either. You're missing some fundamental information about understanding light here, because that is easy to answer. I'm not even going to answer it, because let me get this right. look at this. If you go into this chapter here, Introduction and Understanding Light in Lighting Theory and Equipment, if you go into that chapter, if the website would ever load up, I don't know what's going on with the website today, if you go into that chapter, you will understand implicitly exactly what you need to know there in terms of gloss, matte, highlights, reflections, non-reflections, soft light, hard light. You shouldn't even be asking that question. This is a question that if you're trying to do that, you are also missing a fundamental piece of knowledge that you could basically find out for £12 or $14. You could watch that one chapter and it's going to open your mind completely. And then on top of that, we've also got 15 other theoretical chapters. Again, if the website will ever get back to the sections here on that. Don't know why my computer is running so slow today. It says it's waiting, it's waiting, it's waiting. And finally, we're back. Right, so you've also get all the knowledge from all of these other chapters on understanding light and lighting modifiers and all the conditions and then using light. And then we've got a whole section on product photography as well. And the product photography section teaches you even more about you know, the gloss surfaces, dealing with different reflections. I'm still waiting for that. There we go. Right. So dealing with, for example, like lighting that watch, for example, food photography, lighting difficult products, glossy surfaces, product photography, bottles, glass, expensive luxury items, textiles, all sorts of things, liquids, macros. It's all there. It's all there for just $14 a month. You can watch the lot, fill your boots, stay, leave, join the live shows as you like, okay? So Julian, that's what I say you need to do. Next question, Tu Yang, is there going to be more Broncolor how-to videos? Yes, there is. We just filmed 2 more Broncolor how-to videos with Urs Recker from Broncolor. One of them I did was cosmetics shot. And I believe, Urs did a shot of an iPad, and we showed controlling the reflections and the light and the refraction and all the things in that one. Obviously, the how-to videos are quite short, sweet, brief, little 4-minute tutorials. They're aimed mostly at showing the equipment, obviously, because they're Broncolor videos. So if you want more information, more depth of substance and knowledge, then we've got that over on Carl Taylor Education. Tony says, you think Para is the way to go? No more beauty dish or Octa? There are uses for a beauty dish. There are uses for an Octabox. They do completely different things. The Para and the beauty dish are like milk and honey, okay? Completely different things. They've both got a purpose. They've both got a suitable application. They're tools, okay? So it's like a chisel for a carpenter or a plane, okay? And the carpenter will choose the tool that is best suited to the job. So for a certain type of image, you might want to use the Octabox. For another type of image, you might want to use a Para. So I can get a certain type of look with the Para that I can't get with a softbox, and I can get a certain look with the softbox that is more difficult to get with a Para. Although in saying that, the Para is more versatile because you can effectively turn the Para into a softbox by adding a front diffuser on it as well. So if you wanted to save yourself the money of buying an Octabox, then you could just buy the Para, and it is more multifunctional, but it is a lot more of an expensive modifier. Okay, we're going to take a couple more questions, and then I'm going to show you some test results on this H6 100 against the A7R camera. Helen Cavagnac Taylor, my wife, says hello. Hello. Right. Now, Matthias says, I sent out 50 letters asking for TFP sessions. What's TFP? Anyone know what? Time for prints. Yeah, time for print sessions. No one answer. Where is my mistake? All politely, officially, with culture. I don't know, Matthias. I guess the fact is, let's be honest and let's be brutal. I don't know what your work is like. I've not seen your work. I don't know. But a model who's going to work for free is essentially giving up her time in exchange for prints. What you're saying, it's called time for prints. They give up their time, you give them prints from the shoot. So they have to have a lot of confidence in that they like the quality of your work and they like what they see, because if you're going to give up your time for free just to get prints, you need to know that the prints you're going to get are going to be good and going to be useful for your own portfolio. So I'm not saying I have no idea what your work looks like, but obviously make sure you put your best foot forwards, show them your best work, show them what you're capable of, and explain to them, this is what we're going to deliver, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to give you some great images. It may be worthwhile just investing a little bit and saying, well, look, I can pay you a small amount as well, boom, boom, boom. You know, I know it's difficult because doing test shots with models that you have to pay for can get quite expensive, and if you're not making any money from it, it is a bit of a predicament. Hi, Carl. Oh no, sorry, Yurko says, what do you think about the 5D Mark IV? It looks nice. It looks like the 5D Mark III. I've never picked one up yet. I've never touched one, so I can't tell you. Next one. Sandor Zombor. Hey Carl, what kind of image touches you use in fashion and product photography? What is a good photo? What gives the difference between good or bad photos? How do you decide if a good image is bad? That's a hell of a lot of stuff you want me to answer there, Sandor. Far too deep to answer in a short question. The difference between a good or bad photo, in my opinion, is whether it invokes an emotion, okay? When you look at a picture, if you look at an image, like this one was very popular on Instagram. We put this one on Instagram. It obviously invoked a lot of emotion. People engaged with it, they liked it. I liked the picture, I was very happy with it. I had this picture in mind when I sketched it out and I worked it out and built the prop around that was going to wrap around her. And it seemed to connect with people. It invoked an emotion. So a good or bad image is whether it invokes a response and whether it holds the viewer's attention. That's the bottom line. The elements that make up a good or bad picture are often to do with the content of the picture, the drama in the picture, the color in the picture, the lighting in the picture, and where you draw the eye. So those are all the things that you have to learn through experience and through training, and hopefully over on carltayloreducation.com we can help you with that. Right, Carl. Great name, he says, because his name's Carl. Carl Beadle says, hi Carl, great name. Do you spend much time getting the right white balance when shooting RAW? Because as I understand it, white balance is fully adjustable in post when shooting RAW. Yes, you're absolutely right. It is fully adjustable when shooting in RAW, but I always put a color checker card in and neutralize for the first shot, because when I'm shooting tethered and looking at the picture on screen, I want to look at it how it's meant to be. So whilst you can correct it perfectly okay afterwards, I still prefer to see what I'm doing in a nice neutral format to begin with. Prasanna says, what would it take to be your assistant? It would probably take a miracle, I'm afraid, Prasanna, because I've already got a bunch of them here and they really already get on my nerves. So maybe if I get rid of one of them, no, I've got a good crew here, a good team. I don't know what it would take to be my assistant. It's very difficult. The jobs for an assistant job here in our business don't come up very often. You know, we actually were recently looking for a new video editor, but it's nothing to do with the photography work here. So, you know, there are lots of photographers that have assistants. They come and go, and, you know, some assistants just work on internships. I know that Rankin takes a lot of assistants. Some of them are full-time assistants, first, second assistants, and then third and fourth assistants might be internships where they're not even getting paid. We don't do that here. Everyone who works here gets paid. Yalcin Baron, hey Carl, what do you think using a smaller sensor cameras which have around 24 megapixels for product photography? Well, you can do some good stuff. Now that is a great cue there to look at this result, Yalcin. Let me find this first before you bring this up. Which one? There's the H6 image and there's the Sony. Let me open these two images and let me put these side. Right, okay, just cut to my screen, Ben. So here's an image on a Hasselblad H6-100, and here's an image on the Sony A7R. And the Sony A7R is actually a 42 megapixel camera. The Hasselblad H6 is a 100 megapixel camera. Now, looking at them both there on this high resolution Retina screen, they look pretty good. They both look good, very comparable. But if I shift this into workspace, arrange 2 up vertical, so we've got the Sony on the left, and we've got the Hasselblad on the right there. Now I'm going to zoom in now on this little nuggin thing. Let me just get the zoom tool up. We've got to remember how to do this so it zooms both at the same time. Let's zoom in and keep zooming in on these 2 things. Let me just move this one over because this one's not in the right place. Oh, how do you move it without moving? Yeah. Oh, now it's done that. Look, always does that, doesn't it? Always goes out of alignment. So spacebar, did you say? Yeah. Yeah, but now I press spacebar and I slide it. The other one slides as. I'm not holding shift. It's just doing it anyway. So, right, window, workspace. You know what? I'm going to just forget it. That thing with the thing. I'm just going to move this over here. Drag the window. There. Oh, okay. Slide it like that. Right. There is the. There's the Sony one. And here's the Hasselblad one. Let me just move that over to there. And let's have a look at that. So there's the difference. I don't know how well you can see that on Facebook. It's very difficult to see it on Facebook at low res. But there's the images blown up to about the same size on my screen. And you can see the difference in a Hasselblad H6 100 compared to the Sony. And if I drag these images together over here and we go over to like the detail on the writing, on like this box here, you can see the difference in the quality of the image. It's hard to see maybe at this small size, but there is a huge difference in the image quality. And we are producing a video soon showing the differences. We're going to be zooming in on that video, comparing it to the Hasselblad H550, the H6 100, and the Sony A7R. And a lot of people have said to me, oh, why didn't you use the latest Nikon that's got a great chip? Well, we don't have one of the Nikon, so we didn't have one of those used. So I used the best known camera at the time, the Sony A7R 42 megapixel camera. That video will be released soon. And we're also going to be releasing the test result images, the final files, the exported TIFF files, and we'll be posting those on our website so that you can download them and look at them for yourself. Because the problem with trying to explain it on Facebook or explain it on a YouTube video is that you're getting artifacts and compression from the video process itself. So we're going to let you see the video, and then there'll be a link to actually go and get the image files and download them and actually explore them and zoom in yourself and look at the differences for yourself. Right, couple more questions, we're going to finish it up. Anna says, which type of softbox, octobox, and what is good for outdoor model photography with a Godox AD600B? Thanks, dear Carl. I don't know what a Godox AD600B is. I assume it's some sort of studio light. Softbox, octobox, I like the Octobox 150. If you're going to use an octobox or a softbox, the Octobox 150 is a good all-rounder. We use the Broncolor Octobox 150, and they make adapters for that to fit onto other brands as well. Final question. Jay Chung says, what are the 3 main lenses that a wedding photographer needs? Well, I'm not a wedding photographer, but if it was me in 35mm full frame format, I would say that a 16 to 35mm lens for your wide angle range stuff, an 85mm portrait lens would be a good one, like a shallow depth of field, like a 1.2 or a 1.4. And then a 70 to 200 to cover the more candid stuff. And a good 70 to 200, like a 2.8, maybe with image stabilization as well. And then potentially a 1.4 converter, so you can get that 200mm up to like 300+ focal length without too much loss of light through the converter. Okay, now just a reminder, over here tonight, 6 p.m. UK time, 1300 EST New York time. John Fitzgerald will be my guest on the sofa talking about professional photography printing, making your own portfolios, making your own fine art prints. He's got 35 years knowledge on the subject. He'll be here. Next month, January the 17th, I've got top international photographer Tim Flack joining me on the sofa, does amazing wildlife animal photography. Tim Flack will be here answering your questions and talking about his new project, Endangered. I'm very much looking forward to that. And we've also got some live photography shows, live shooting shows, where I'll be shooting models, demonstrating beauty, lighting techniques, December the 19th over on karltayloreducation.com. So if you like joining us for these little chats, that's great, but these are just little rubbishy chats, to be honest, okay? We answer a few questions, we show you a few bits and bobs. All the main action and all the good stuff happens over karltayloreducation.com. £12 or $14 per month. We've even got an annual membership plan now, so if you don't like paying monthly, sign up for our annual plan. It's really inexpensive as well. You get access, all our training, all our live shows, everything. We hope to see you over there. Thanks very much for joining me on Karl Taylor live chat here on Facebook. Have a good day.